What happens when the people sworn to uphold the law create the crime? Or when the people sworn to protect us become the architects of crime? When law enforcement stops catching criminals and starts creating them? Welcome to Entrapped, the podcast that dives into one of the most controversial corners of American justice, government entrapment. This is Entrapped with Tom Hamner. Welcome to Entrapped. My name is Tom Hamner. My story starts June 1st, 1973, when I was born into this world by my biological mother. I was soon given up for adoption to some wonderful parents. Fast forward to today, and we are a couple of years past January 6th, 2021. That is a day that I did not expect to change my life drastically, dramatically, in ways that I would never have thought. And now I sit in front of you as the host of Entrapped, where I get to tell my story from the ground. And we're also going to introduce and bring on others so that we can hear their stories too. So my story begins like many others that arrived on January 6th, 2021. I was very concerned and disgusted with the state of our elections and our country. And I wasn't the only one. There were millions of us that came together that day to let our voices be heard, to stand with our president, Donald Trump. People had extremely high expectations that day. We were shaking hands, taking pictures. People were talking with one another. It was an extremely happy scene. People that were speaking were powerful. Their speeches made sense. It resonated in all of our hearts and souls. And we stood in that cold waiting to hear from the man that we supported 100%, Donald Trump's speech. Mr. Trump, his speech had power, authority, and a message that carried the American spirit. Now, if you've watched or attended any of the Trump rallies, you know he has a lot of the same old song and dance. But as powerful as it is, I can hear it over and over and over again. On this day, I took that as an opportunity to make my way to the Capitol earlier than the rest of the crowd to try and get a lay of the land, see what was going on. Didn't know if there was something to worry about, and if there was, I sure in heck wanted to be ahead of it. I ran into a lot of great patriots, also some looky-loos that had no idea what was going on with the speech and all of the people. I witnessed buses parking and people exiting that looked much like me, Trump supporters. And little did I know that I was actually witnessing some of the agitators and plants that were being dropped off to disrupt the scene. Upon arriving to the edge of the Capitol, I gathered with another group of patriots who happened to have two-way radios. So I was able to listen to the speech and make some new friends. With doing that, I was observing the Capitol grounds and how the Capitol Police had placed themselves on the grounds and how they were coming up and telling people they could not be where they were. For instance, on the planter wall that borders the Capitol grounds, a patriot had let her young child up onto this wall so that they could see over to the Capitol building. Well, I watched a Capitol police officer come up and ask the lady to take their child off the wall because nobody could be up there. I decided that I was going to be the rebellious Gen Xer I am and jump on the wall and ask him if I was allowed to be up there, which he turned and said nothing and retook his post up in the middle of the grounds. As I was surveying what was going on, I noticed that there was a group of patriots that were up towards the Capitol. So I took that as my sign that I was going to help people get up the wall, and we were going to go over to the Capitol and join our fellow countrymen. And that's when it all went bad. No sooner did I help people up that wall and onto that green belt to the back of the Capitol, we marched along. Some of us ran along, some jogged, all happy, filming each other. But when we got to the concrete steps, things got nasty. Before any media was set up or any helicopters with cameras were in the area, the assaults had started. A fellow that I was high-fiving and jumping up and down next to, he went down on the ground as I heard a report that reminded me much like a gunshot, only to then see blood up and to the left of the fella's head who had fallen down. I decided I was going to try and help this man. And when I grabbed him, I realized that he hadn't been shot. He was being tased. And as that shock went through me, I let go of him. And I looked up at the officer, shaking my head in disgust, wondering why he had done this to this person who was high-fiving me. He wasn't attacking anybody. Well, another officer came out from behind of that one, and with his taser trained on me, he shot me in the leg. I was lucky. It didn't get to the skin. So I was able to take those barbs and throw them back at the officer. And I made a conscious decision that I wasn't going to do anything to hurt that person. I was going to do everything I can to understand the situation. With that, the crowd filled in. People were bumping and jostling, still in good spirits. Not a lot of people knew what was going on at that time. A couple minutes, you fast forward, and this is where things get out of hand. The barricades that you see in the videos and the pictures that the police are using against the crowd, those were not set up when I got there. They weren't set up at all. They were used to ram us, to push us back, to agitate us. There was nothing that they did that was to calm the crowd. Everything was done to agitate and disrupt. With the amount of people that were there and the little force of police, I honestly believe that if there was an insurrection, it was the worst one that was ever planned in the history of any country in any existence. So shortly after all of this starts taking place, that's when people start getting hurt. I was witness to people getting sprayed directly in the face like me with pepper spray, people getting assaulted with rubber bullets, batons, CS canisters thrown into the crowd, flashbang grenades thrown into the crowd. It was a chaotic experience. I would say it was scary. It was concerning. There were children there. Yes, people were there with their children. And this is how we were treated when we decided we didn't like what was going on. They killed somebody in the Capitol. Ashley Babbitt lost her life. That was needless. The officer involved, there's still no consequences. Roseanne Boylan, she was beaten and lost her life in the tunnel that day. Who's being held responsible for that? They sure did hold me responsible for things. I think it's only fair that they're held responsible. There were two other gentlemen that passed, I believe, Kevin Greason and Benjamin Phillips. They lost their lives to heart complications because of the flashbang grenades. We don't want to forget those people. They need to live on. There's a message in the loss that we experienced of those lives that day. And let us not forget Brian Sicknick, who was helped by the Patriots to get medical assistance, but was ignored in the Capitol by his own people, and later went on to have heart complications outside of the Capitol and passed. So that's the truth about those lives lost. Now let's talk about all the rest of the lives that maybe they weren't lost and moved on, but what about all the loss that they've suffered after their arrest, after their release, all the way up to today? What have I suffered? Well, as a business person in Colorado Springs, my reputation is damaged. People have used what happened on January 6th to not do business with me, to smear me when I'm seen at events and I'm called onto the stage. The damage is almost irreparable. However, the reason that we have launched Entrapped is because we want to put a spotlight on what it is to be entrapped by a corrupt establishment and how we educate ourselves in going forward to understand the inalienable rights that are protected by that beautiful document we call the Constitution, followed up by the Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence, all of which state how we are to conduct our government, keep our government in check, and exercise our God-given rights that no man can take from any one of us. And with that, welcome to Entrapped. I'm Tom Hamner.